Hey, how we doing? Good evening. Welcome to Paranormal Monkey Podcast. Hope you're good at home. We've got a kind of lot to pack in this evening. There's nothing this next guest does not know about Hull and the surrounding area regards history, murders, weird stuff. It's gonna be a great one. So, welcome, Mike. How are we doing, Mike?
Good evening. I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. It's like I say, I've not spoken to you in a good little while, so it's really good to kind of catch. I think it's been before lockdown when we last spoke to you. It's been ages actually.
Possibly, yeah, it could have been.
And I think and for anybody who doesn't know you, I regard you as one of the most prolific writers I've ever known, and you can talk about the number of books that you've written later. But do you want to, for anybody who's not come across you or not seen you at a convention or on TV? Just want to say a little bit about yourself, first of all, Mike. Is that all right?
Yeah, my name's Mike Covell. I'm a local historian, born, bred and based in Kingston upon Hull, which is in the northeast of England. I love the paranormal, but I also love history. So when I go to haunted locations, I like to go and research the history at the archives and stuff like that. I've also got a fascination and passion for true crime, especially historical true crime. And UFOs and sea monsters and all that kind of stuff. I sort of grew up in that era when the Unexplained magazine was out and things like that, and watched things like Strange But True with Michael Aspel and that kind of stuff. Grew up in that kind of era of X-Files and so on.
It was the best era. Let's face it.
It was.
Growing up with that stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So as I grew up, I wanted to write. I wanted to write about Hull and its history and the dark side. And I started writing, and one book became two became four. I ended up publishing 32 books on the history of Hull. And then it kind of took a weird turn because I got offered a lot of TV stuff. I was doing initially local stuff with the BBC and ITV, and it'd usually just be me in all suited and booted, but like in a really old, crusty, crumbling old historical building. Yeah. And then sort of moved on from that, and I met the guys from Most Haunted. So I ended up on Most Haunted when they filmed in Hull. Off the back of that, I did a few of the Most Haunted experience events with them as well, and then they offered me a place on Most Haunted Live, which was from 30 East Drive back in 2015 over Halloween.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Yeah, then off the back of that, it was Paranormal Lockdown, a Yorkshire Haunting or the Black Monk Special. That was, again, at 30 East Drive, working with Nick and Katrina. And then, of course, I got to work with you, which was wonderful.
We'll talk about that.
So that was great fun. That was a lovely shoot. And then sort of it diversified a little bit after that, because I'd published stories about werewolves, UFOs, sea monsters. So people was asking me to kind of do stuff on that kind of theming. And then off the back of that, I ended up on true crime shows. I ended up on Killer Neighbours, which was a fun one to shoot. I did a couple of TV shows on the Beast of Barmston Drain with people like Vice TV, Travel Channel, Discovery Channel. Yeah. And then I ended up on World War II Treasure Hunters with Suggs from Madness.
That's cool, though.
Which was so fun. I mean, he's such a nice man. And it was a really serious subject matter. So when we were shooting, we were really, really serious. But as soon as the camera stopped, he was cracking jokes and we were having a laugh. And it was
comes across as a nice guy. He does come across as a lovely fella.
So laid back. There was no script or anything like that. It just sort of said, right, what do you want me to say? And the producer would be like, right, can you say this? And he'd go, yep. And it was just great. And I loved working with him. So much fun. So much fun.
There's obviously tonight we're going to try and kind of dip into lots of different places and lots of different situations. And as ever, for anybody at home who's watching this and is not aware of how we do things, so I'll be talking to Mike for half hour, 45 minutes, and then leave usually the last 15 or so minutes for any questions for Mike. And trust me, there's no, if it's about Kingston upon Hull or the East Riding of Yorkshire, anywhere in the east of England, pretty much northeast of England, Mike pretty much knows about it, because he's just spent years and years and years in archives and researching and things like that. Now, before we get cracking, and we'll try and, like I say, talk obviously mainly about different haunted places in Hull, if that's okay.
Yeah.
There are some mad stories, but when you kind of had that interest in history, which was the first place in Hull that got your attention, that you wanted to kind of research or you found fascinating for whatever reason, whether it be murder or ghosts or whatever?
The Royal Station Hotel, which is the when you pull up in Hull on the train, it's the immediate hotel that backs onto the railway platforms.
I have a picture. Ta-da!
There we go, yeah. So I absolutely love that place. And one of the reasons being it's got such a wonderful history. Queen Victoria visited 1854, where that's when it became the Royal. It's linked to 10 different Jack the Ripper suspects. It was linked to the Yorkshire Ripper hunt. There were 3 mysterious deaths in there where gentlemen were found killed in their beds. It's got such a wonderful history, and on top of that as well, there's years and years of paranormal stories from various staff and managers. And I'd sort of gone in and said to them, I'm writing a book about the history of Hull. This is one place I'd love to investigate. And as I went in, the duty manager came over, and his name was Ray, wonderful guy. And Ray said to me, I love that sort of stuff. And we just instantly often became friends. And at that time, St. Stephen's was being built, which is just adjacent to the transport interchange. So capacity at the hotel had dropped. So on a weekend, he'd say, do you want to come in? And on a Friday night, I'd go in with all my cameras and stuff. And we'd go down in the basement, which was massive. And we'd just go and investigate. And we'd sit in rooms in the dark and ask out for stuff.
It's a beautiful looking place. I mean, more than anything else.
And the picture that you've got there, if you can imagine that you've got that central bay with 5 sort of arches. Yeah. The 2 windows at either side, that's the original hotel. It's been extended. So the little grey bits at either side, they're relatively modern in terms of its history. So originally it would have been a square hotel, but over the years it's grown and grown and grown. And the first night I was with him, we experienced stuff that I cannot explain. And I just got the bug, and I said to him, look, when I come back, I want to do different experiments. So I took in mediums, I took in psychics, I took in paranormal groups, all different groups to see what they would get. And some of the most surreal moments in my paranormal research history have taken place in that hotel. There was one night where we were getting ready to do an investigation, and the duty manager called us, and he was like, right, we've got the Moscow State ballerina they're in town, they're performing at the theatre, they've just finished, they're just knocking off for the night. Would you mind if they joined you? And it was so surreal running around the hotel in the darkness in the middle of the night, surrounded by all these ballerinas from Russia. There was another incident where Reverend Peter Laws, I don't know if you spoke to Peter.
Yeah.
He called me up and he just said, right, I've got two requests. First of all, I want to go and see the Beast of Barmston Drain.
Yeah.
But secondly, is the only chance we can spend some time in the hotel? And I was like, yeah, of course. And I took him to the hotel. And that night there was again another duty manager called Charlie was on. And Peter and I was just sat having a cup of tea in the reception, which is just through that main door. And Charlie walked by and I said, excuse me, would you mind if we had a quick look around in the basement? And Charlie was like, let's go. So we all went down. It was wonderful. We had a bit of a tour of the hotel. And it's a fantastic chapter in the book when he talks about it. And it was just great fun. I mean, he's such a nice guy, is Peter.
What things have been seen, in terms of the ghostly apparitions? Obviously, it's got it's the history of murder in there, but what kind of things are meant to be haunting that place?
So one of the stories is about a local gentleman who was involved in a homosexual love triangle, and they killed one of their party and buried him under the floorboards. But he had in the hotel, he had a hairdressing shop, and for years people have talked about the hairdressing shop being haunted. And it's basically, this hairdressing shop is under the floor, and it's down a dark tunnel where there's no lights, and you go into this sort of small room. There's a table, you turn to the left, there's a glass sort of frame, and through the doorway you've got where the people would have sat to have their haircuts. There would have been sinks and mirrors. It really is surreal, but because there's no electricity down there now, it's quite surreal anyway, because it's
grim.
Yeah, you're seeing stuff that shouldn't be there, but it is there. I remember we did a night in there where I was with 14 guests, and we were stood around this table with a candle in the middle, and at the edge of the room is sort of a door that leads to a shower cubicle area where the showers were and things like that for gentlemen to get washed and showered. This was back in the day before people had baths at home and stuff like that. And in this doorway was an individual that came forward in the darkness and was just stood watching. And I looked around the room and I'm counting myself, and I thought, there's 14 guests and me, that's 15, but there's 16 of us in this room.
Wow.
And sort of looked across at this guy and said, excuse me, who are you? And he just sort of backed into the shadows and disappeared. And with that, there was pandemonium. Everybody screamed, everybody panicked. And you immediately had 14 people trying to get out of one small door.
I'm not surprised.
People are getting wedged and stuff like that. And all the time I'm thinking, who the hell is this person? What is he doing down here?
Yeah.
Because I'm still thinking it's a human. I'm still thinking someone's broke in or a guest has joined us. And, I'm trying to work out who the hell it is. And
did it look out of place, or did he look out of place, or could you tell what he was wearing?
He looked really tall, and it looked like he was wearing really dark clothes, and you could just sort of make out the features of his face. But it was the way he just walked backwards into the darkness. As he walked back, it just sort of shrouded his face, and that was creepy enough as it was.
That's amazing.
But you immediately had like all these people panicking, trying to get out. And I kept saying to them, just be calm, please be calm, because if we end up dead, they're going to find us wedged in this tiny room and wonder what the hell has happened. And I was trying to get everyone out in an orderly fashion and stuff like that. And then, you've got all your equipment as well. So you've got to pick up your REM pods and all your other stuff, your cameras and everything. So that was a really weird experience. There was another experience where I took a member of staff. He worked on the reception. And he said to me, will you take me down and have a look around? Because I've never been down before. And I said, yeah, sure. And I took him down. And he was a big strapping lad. And we were walking down. And when you walk down towards the end of this sort of long corridor, it's like a tunnel. You start off with electricity, but you're walking towards darkness. And I would always say to people, psychologically, when you're walking towards darkness, it scares you. So if you look back towards the light, you'll be fine. And as we're walking along, he kept looking back to the light to reassure himself, and he screamed, and he grabbed my arm and he bruised my arm, and he said, take me upstairs now. And bearing in mind, to get back upstairs, we've got to go back down that corridor. And I'm saying to him, whatever it was you've just seen, we've got to go back down there. And he was like, I don't care, get me out of here now. And I took him upstairs and I said to him, what did you see? And it really funny, real serious. He said, I saw the Slender Man. And I started laughing. That's just not
Yeah.
real, is it? It's just, it's this internet meme and stuff like that that's really taken over. And I said, what was it you saw? And he kept saying it was a Slender Man. It was a Slender Man. And he went to the bar and he ordered a double. He ordered a taxi. He handed his keys in and quit there and then. And before he left, I said to him, what did this look like? And he said he had a long black coat on with a top hat, which to me is a Victorian gent. It's not the Slender Man. But yeah, he quit. He left. And then there was just a week before, no, it was the night before lockdown, I had a booking to do a lecture at the hotel for businesses, investors, all this type of stuff. And the manager said, we want you to do a history of the hotel and talk about all this type of stuff. So I stood there for 45 minutes talking about all the murders that have taken place in there, all the rogues and vagabonds and ruffians that have stayed in there over the years. And then finished the lecture, and the director turned around to everyone and he was sort of like, yeah, so we basically wanted to invest in this. And it was real surreal because I thought no one's going to bother. But yeah, it's been closed now for investigations for about 4 or 5 years. We've not done anything in there, which is a real shame.
Wow.
The underground area has been taken over by network rail and things like that. So it's just
just to go back, it's a lot. Like I say, it's a beautiful building. It really is.
Yeah,
it makes me. It does. I mean, there's a few people in the chat going, "Oh, I want to get in there." I can see Ali from Hauntex TV going, "Yeah, that's it. We're going to go back to Hull now." So I'm going to move from hauntings, and I think this is the weirdest thing I've, and I have to talk about the Beast of Barmston Drain because it's the whole thing was mad. I'm just going to put this on. this I think was a tweet by the Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Mr. Rock God Alice Cooper himself saying, so there are suddenly several reports of a werewolf-like creature near a small town in the UK. Do you think it could be real? And apparently there was reports that he was quite interested in coming over to Hull to investigate this himself. So what on earth was going on at this area called Barmston Drain? And what was the, first of all, how did it lead to Alice Cooper coming out with this stuff, and what on earth was going on?
So it must have been 2015, I think it was. Yeah. I just started working freelance at the Old Daily Mail. I was getting people to submit stories and stuff about weird stuff that had happened in Hull.
Yeah.
And this individual contacted me, and he'd said that he'd seen a black-eyed ghost kid on Skullcoats Lane, which runs right across Barmston Drain. So I put a post on social media saying, has anyone ever had any weird experiences on Skullcoats Lane? And it's such an open question. You expect weird answers from people. But within 7 hours, I'd had 6 or 7 people individually, independently message me saying, have you ever looked into the Beast of Barmston Drain? And all of them were describing this. Some said it was a hairy man. Some said it was a werewolf. Some said it was a man that can change into a werewolf. And of course, you've got to investigate. It's what a story. So I got in touch with my boss at the Hull Daily Mail and said, I really want to write this up as a story. And they said, before you do, you've got to go. So I went and I took my friend John, my friend Terry. We didn't see anything. It was a bit of a boring night. But I wrote it up as an article. And overnight, it went viral. I mean, it went absolutely bonkers. It was in all the nationals. It was mentioned in America and across the world. And it was just crazy. And one of the things that happened was initially the press were taking the mickey a little bit. It's a bit of a daft story. So I just said to them, do you want to come to Hull? Do you want to come and visit and see what it's like yourself? And it calls it a drain, but what it actually is, it's like a river that would have drained the landscape in the Victorian period. So when water fell onto the fields to stop it flooding, it would have gone into the drain. So when people think drain, they assume it's going to be full of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. It's not that sort of drain. It's like a corridor of wildlife that runs right through the heart of the city. So I invited the media down, and the media came, and that night we saw some weird things in a bush that looked like weird eyes. And the media reported on that the next day, and then it grew and TV shows got involved. Vice TV came down, BBC. I must have took about 20 different networks down there. paranormal investigators came along. I was taking students. A lot of media students were coming with cameras and stuff and wanting to film stuff.
Yeah.
And it just really, really took off. And the minute it seemed to die down, it took off again. Then it died down. Then it took off again. People brought out merchandise. There was a guy who made a Beast of Barmston doing beer. You could get hoodies and T-shirts. There was a comic. I never saw a penny of any of this. It really took off. There was a rock operetta. A local musical band called Black Kez performed a rock operetta, which was really fun. They wrote a song called "The Beast of Barmston Drain."
Isn't it mad how these things just explode like this?
Just grew, and to this day, I'm still getting reports from people of sightings. That people that have lived down there for years and years that have seen stuff and they can't explain it. So it just grew and grew and grew until it became a global phenomena. I ended up I was on Japanese radio. I was in radio shows in America, New Zealand, Australia, all around the world. I was doing these shows from this room, just talking to people on the phone and telling them what people had seen. And then it just seemed to die down again when Alice Cooper put that post on, and it just became a phenomenon. And I reached out to his people and we spoke, and they said, if we're ever in the area, would you take us down? I said, yeah, sure. The offer's still open if he's watching. So yeah, it was so surreal, and it was such a wonderful experience because we did see weird stuff that we can't explain.
So obviously you kind of interviewed these witnesses, these eyewitnesses who said they saw what they think that might have been a werewolf and things like that. And apparently, from memory, was it that it kind of was able to jump over a 10-meter high fence and all of this kind of nonsense that was going on? Was there anything that was similar between the different eyewitness accounts? And if there was, what did you in the end kind of conclude, at the very end of listening to all these people?
So Barmston Drain is about 20 miles long, but all of the sightings took place in a very small area. So when you chart them on a map, it's a very small cluster.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really interesting, the way that they were all in this very small cluster between these two different streets. You've got this drain, and all the sightings was in that particular area. All of them said it was this hairy creature, which I found quite interesting. Some of the people described it moving and jumping in the same manner. There's a bridge over, it's called Fountain Road. There's a really old stone bridge, and 2 or 3 people had seen it in the road as they were driving up to it, and it had run and jumped over the parapet of the bridge into this grassland. And 3 people had seen it on that patch of grass. And it's all private, so we can't get in there, but it's allotments. It's full of animals, chickens and things like that. Right. So that was really interesting. We found a grave that was something had clawed at the grave, and all the mud had been clawed at, and the grave was open. And we found that because we were filming at midnight for, I think it was Travel Channel. And I was walking backwards talking to camera in this cemetery, and I fell into the grave. And my foot
God.
Yeah, so I was terrified. I'm in a grave. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
They're terrified because they think I've broke my leg. And the cameraman's sort of saying, "There's scratch marks on the mud. There's scratch marks on the mud." And it was just pandemonium. It was just chaos. And all the time I'm thinking, "Get me out of the grave. Drag me out right now," because my leg had gone through this grave, and I was like, "Get me out. I don't like this." I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out. It was awful.
Of all the places to end up, that's not where you want to end up, is it?
No, not. It's the middle of the night. It was pitch black. It wasn't the best of the night, so the weather was terrible. But yeah, we had moments as well where we were filming, and we found, walking through the cemetery, I found this big pile of excrement. Now, the skeptic in me was thinking it could be animal, it could be dog or fox. But on the flip side of that, people do camp in the cemeteries. We do get homeless people that will camp in the cemeteries. Nice. So there is an option as well. However, I sort of said to them, for health and safety reasons and for reasons of cleanliness, just watch out, there's a big pile of poo. Don't stand in it. And with that, the cameraman was shaking the camera. The guy was on the floor sniffing it and taking samples. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Oh, dear God.
It turned into a drama at that point.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Why would you get down on your hands and knees and start sniffing it? For God's sake.
Yeah, it was all played up to the camera. But yeah, it was so surreal. And people kept saying, "Do you believe in werewolves?" And I don't believe in werewolves at all. But when all these people are telling you this story, as someone who's interested, I want to investigate. I want to go and see what I can find. And
Yeah.
and I always say to people, the fun was in searching it. When you go out with your mates on a night and you've all got your torches and your cameras and stuff, you have a right laugh. You have great fun, and there's a bit of camaraderie and there's a bit of ribbing going on, and and you're having. And I remember one night there was about 30 of us on the drain banks, and it was all cloudy. And at midnight, the clouds separated, and there was a full moon, and we all just we all just stood in silence, waiting, and nothing happened. But it was just the surrealism of looking around and seeing all these people just all looking at the moon, waiting for something.
Wait for a howl. You want a howl at that point, don't you?
We did Vice TV. Vice TV came, and initially they were taking the mick a little bit. And I took them down the drain banks, and it was a Sunday evening. It was close to midnight. It was pouring down with rain. And we heard this, I was at front, and they were sort of behind me, walking behind. And we heard this commotion in a tree, like something large falling from the tree. And we heard a thud, like something big hit the floor. And I sort of stopped, like, what the hell was that? And they was like, we need to go and look. And as we walked over, a man came out of a bush, dressed in shorts and t-shirt, in the middle of the night. Now, it is blue, so it could just be that. It could just be normal behaviour. But at the same time, I thought that was a bit weird. So we carried on filming.
I have to interrupt for a second, just because I think this is the perfect. I mean, to say, oh, this could just be something that's normal and a bit weird, right? Can we briefly go back to the churchyard incident on your ghost tour, which I've never forgotten because it was just awesome and really funny. And I'm sorry if this is, and we're going to digress away from ghosts for a minute and werewolves, because I think Mike has the best encounter I've ever come across on a ghost tour. So, over to you, Mike.
So this was the summer before the Beast of Barmston Drain, and we was in the same area looking around the cemeteries. So there's two versions. There's the media version, but I'll tell you the truth first.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful summer's day. I was with my friend Terry. There was no tour. It wasn't night. We were walking his dog, and we walked into a cemetery, and he said to me, "Don't look now, but there's some people over there having sex." So what do? You have a cheeky look. And they were making a film. There was a boy and a girl up to no good. There was a sound man and a cameraman and a lighting man.
Wow.
And Terry's a lot older than me, so he started shouting, "Oi, be a bit more respectful. What do you think you're doing?" And they got dressed and ran off. And we just had a bit of a chuckle, told everyone about it when we got back. And then when the media descended on Hull, they sort of said to me, "Have you got any interesting stories?" And like an idiot, I mentioned that story to him. And the next day it was I think it was the Express. And it said, "Ghost hunter on a ghost walk with clients, goes into a haunted cemetery, hears groans in the middle of the night and discovers this porn film being made." And by the time it got to the other nationals, it said there was I think it was something like there was performing sexual rituals. And at one point it went over to New York. And when it hit America, they said that I'd stumbled upon satanic sexual rituals in the middle of the night. And there was this, there was a character that was shaking his walking stick, and I told him to sit down and eat his sandwiches and all this. But it's just one of those stories that just kept getting brought up. And just recently, I was going through some newspaper archives digitally that cover the world, and I found out it was discussed in like Jamaica, South Africa. There was newspapers like as far away as you can imagine talking about this guy that had stumbled upon these rituals in the cemetery. But there was another one after that wasn't as big. I'd gone into a local columbarium, which is where people's ashes are stored, and some tow rags had gone in and ripped the front off the stones and scattered the ashes all over. And I did an article about that in the Hull Daily Mail. And one of my colleagues sort of expanded on the article and said, "Mike, who is a paranormal expert, claims that the ashes were taken for sexual rituals." And I said, "I never said anything of the matter. Like, where'd you get that from?" And he said, "Well, in South Africa, they do that." We're not in South Africa. We're in Hull.
This says more about the journalist than anything else, I think.
Yeah, well,
Bloody
everything,
hell.
it was the same. The Beast of Barmston Drain story. One of the eyewitnesses saw it jumping over a 7-foot wall. They never said how big it was, but when the media got hold of that, they turned it into a 7-foot werewolf. So if people are doing their own work, they're gonna not believe that and go to the original source material. But a lot of the other newspapers just kept regurgitating that 7-foot werewolf in Hull, and it wasn't the case.
Yeah. Well, it goes to show, doesn't it, that how these, I mean, in both cases actually, but how an initial story just gets amplified and added to, and you'd think that the media would just kind of just report on what people saw and keep it to, without sensationalizing it too much. But no, it went obviously off the radar. Right. Anyway, enough of that because it's just mad. Back to Haunted Place now. 39 De Grey Street. Anybody in the paranormal in the UK will have heard or may have heard. Don't get it confused with 30 East Drive. This is 39 De Grey Street in Hull. Now, many years back, myself and Mike and Dale, who I was investigating with when we did Paranormal Truth, did a documentary, and we invited the owner, Andy Yates, to 39 De Grey Street, where he then gave us an amazing, lurid description of all the various haunted things that are meant to have happened in this particular place, including a history of it being a mortuary and all manner of things going on, which was very interesting. And until we brought Mike in, who was happily then debunked pretty much everything the owner said. So, where did you want to go with 39 De Grey Street, Mike? How do we want to play this one?
Oh, it was shocking, wasn't it? Yeah. So when the story first came out, they were publishing it as it had been a morgue, a mortuary, a funeral parlor, a coffin maker. It had been a hostel. 20 children were killed there. The previous occupant had fled in terror and contacted the police, and the police had come and fled in terror. And there was all these stories. And initially, I asked them for the address so I could research it, and they gave me that old chestnut of, "We've tried, but we can't." So I waited till it was published in the paper when they published the address. Yep. Went straight to the archives at the History Centre, and I went through the trade directories, the census, the polling books, the electoral roll, post office directory, births, marriages, and deaths. It was basically a company called Hardacres who were furniture removers, and that's about as exciting as it gets, really. There was no morgue, no mortuary, no funeral parlour, no coffin makers. There was no deaths or suicides recorded in there. Certainly wasn't a hostel. 20 children weren't murdered in there. And through the electoral roll, I managed to trace a few people that lived in there. And the lady that lived in there was the last person to live in there before it was sold to its current owner.
Yeah.
I spoke to her I sent her a message and said, "Can you tell me about your experiences?" And her first message back was so good, I took a screenshot. And it just basically said, I mean, this is an elderly lady. She basically said it was a load of rubbish, but she used really colourful metaphors to illustrate a point. And I said, "What happened?" And she said it was a beautiful family home. We lived in there. We loved it. Nothing happened. So then I sent a Freedom of Information request to Humberside Police. Yeah. And that's like an official document that they have to reply to. And I said to them, "Was you ever called to the property?" And they sent me an official reply back, which I've still got. And it said no. So basically, we've just got this made-up narrative with this made-up history, and it just grew from there. And it's a story that just keeps, it continues to grow because there's a lot of, what's that saying? A fool and the money are easily parted. Yeah. You still get people going. There occasionally there are still events and stuff like that. There was an episode of My House is Haunted where they did an episode from there, and they used the fake history. They said, "This is what we were told it was this, that, and the other, and it's all false." And then they changed the goalpost. They moved the goalposts and said the property, the white property that's on the edge of the screen, they said that's where all the stuff took place, and it moved through the wall. So then I went away and researched that property, and then they changed the story and said the property at the other side with the bare brick, it was in that property and it came through that side of the wall. So I went away and researched that property as well. And neither of them had anything suspicious. None of them were funeral makers or coffin makers or funeral directors or morgues or mortuary, anything like that at all. But just over the years, the stories have grown and grown. And it's like, when someone tells a story, then the next person that tells it adds a bit on. Then the next person that tells it adds a bit more. So we went and filmed. I remember it was I think it was about February time. I remember it was freezing.
It was freezing cold. It was very,
so
very cold.
I remember turning up and I was full of cold. I was drinking lots of Lemsips. I was living on Hall soothers and things like that. And I turned up with my big woolly hat on. And one of the first things I remember was I went to the toilet upstairs, and I was stood in the bathroom at the urinal on the toilet, and I heard a voice behind me shout, "Do you want a brew?" And I thought, "What the hell is that?" And I thought, "This is it. It's real." And I turned around and there was no one there. And then I heard it again say, "Do you want a brew?" And it was Terry, you remember my friend that I brought along? Who was very mad. Terry was downstairs in the kitchen making a cuppa, and he was shouting up through an hole in the floor. And I remember every room I took him in, he moaned. I don't know if you remember, he was moaning about exposed wiring, missing boards. Yeah, he was moaning about the weather. And it was just hilarious. And Terry's not backwards in coming forwards. He was basically just walking around going, "Big con, innit? It's big con, just a big con." And I was like saying to him, "Just be quiet."
He wasn't that subtle, was he, Terry?
No, he wasn't. And then Andy turned up and kicked me out. So I remember we stood on the doorway to film, and because I was so cold, I had this big woolly hat on. And you turned around to me and you sort of said, "You can't have your logo on the film." So I remember I turned my woolly hat backwards because I didn't want to take it off because I was so cold. And I ended up looking like a garden gnome. And that was the still that you used to promote my part in the show.
Yeah,
was with that hat backwards, which to this day I use that still in a lot of my lectures, and to this day people still take the piss. People still have a list about it.
Honestly, the one thing which I think I kind of get from the whole saga around this property is the fact that so many locations, not just this one, but so many locations have a false history.
Yes.
And it is, I think, so important to do your research. And or talk to a historian who's done their research. And because like you said, you went through all the archives, all of the registers and things like that. And you said, no, absolutely not. These people did not leave fleeing in terror. The people lived here for many years quite happily and so on. So from your point of view, as a historian point of view, how important is it to, when you go to somewhere with these haunted stories that you actually look into because some people say, "Well, I don't like to research it." How important is it for you, do you think, to research places like this?
Oh, very. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can tell you 30 East Drive has got a made-up history. We were talking before we came on about the Golden Fleece. There's a few elements of that are sort of a made-up history. Most of the locations that you see have a history attached to them that's just not real. And we do it in Hull. We seem to do it a lot. We have a lot of properties that have like a fake history. There's quite a few pubs that have stories connected to them, relating to murders or activity. And you get paranormal groups will go in with a psychic or medium and immediately pick up on stuff that's been debunked. They'll pick up on characters that don't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Corinne's I'll just put Corinne's comment on here saying, "People forget those of us who are passionate about the real history and reports spend hundreds of hours on research and interviews for no payment." So yeah, that's it. There are people out there that are really keen on the genuine history being in the public domain and not accepting these false histories which are kind of prevalent everywhere, Right. I'm just going to, because obviously I'm going to, in about 5 minutes, I'll give people the opportunity to kind of speak to you. Because like I said, I'll try to dip into a couple of other places because, and I'll try and do this fairly quickly. This lovely place, I think, is this the Dram Shop? I think it is.
It's the Dram Shop, yeah. Beautiful building. So many years ago, a friend of mine called Paul was the landlord there. And he was closing up for the night. He'd sat down at a table with a pan and he was cashing up, sorting all his books out. And his wife had gone upstairs and she messaged him on his phone and said, "Oh, you sat with?" And he said, "I'm sat by myself." And she said, "There's a woman sat with you and she's laughing like you're telling her stories and stuff." He was like, "No, I'm down here by myself. Come and have a look." And she went downstairs and there was no one there. And that was a story he told me like years and years ago. But since then, other landlords have come forward and said, "Oh yeah, we've seen this woman on CCTV. Sometimes she stood at the bar. Sometimes she sat in a particular area of the bar." But what's fascinating about this building, I mean, you could architecturally, it's gorgeous. I mean,
It's
look at that
beautiful, yeah.
that frontage. I mean, it's beautiful. It's on the main bus route, so all the buses pass this building. It's lovely. But underneath in the basement, there's a massive network of tunnels which we think were dug in World War II. And it's fascinating down there. And we did a few shoots down there with Hull Daily Mail. And I remember we were down in the basement in the cellar area in these tunnels, and there was myself and Paul, the landlord. There should be photos online of it, actually.
Yeah.
And we were doing photographs down there, and the cameraman said to us, "I'm going to stand at the back of the tunnel. You guys stand near the edge of the tunnel, but have the flash in your hands. So when I take a picture, the flash will go off and it will illuminate you guys." So he's down in the darkness and we could just hear all these noises and taps and like someone's rapping on the top of a beer barrel. And I sort of turned around to him and went, "Do you believe in this type of stuff?" And he was like, "Not really, but I'm quickly changing my mind." And then I said to him, you're in a tunnel right at the back. And I say there was about an inch of mud in this tunnel from the rainwater coming in.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "If anything kicks off now and you need to run out of here, you're in the dark. You've not got a torch or anything like that." And it was really quite eerie down there. The three of you, you are the only people down there, but you can hear noises like people are in the adjacent cellar area banging on beer barrels and stuff. And there was no one there. And we listened to the noise of the pumps, because when someone pours a pant, that makes a noise when the air's getting pulled through.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. This was totally different. This was like something was like had a bit of metal and was banging it on the top of one of the barrels. So yeah, quite an interesting place, that one.
Do you know what this what strikes me when you're talking is actually there must be hundreds and hundreds of places like this in nearly every town and city, worldwide, which has got a really fascinating history and may be haunted, but people generally don't particularly know about it so much. And it's only because you've done research and things into it that you've kind of uncovered these places.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was researching my 2 books on the haunted pubs in Hull, I rang up every pub in the city and just asked them, "Have you got any ghost stories?" And some of them were great. Some of them were willing to share. I remember talking to one guy and he told me to F off. Wasn't very nice. But most of them were lovely. And a lot of them would invite me down and said, "You can have a look. You can take photographs. You can come and visit." And basically the thing I had with them is, once you've told me your ghost stories, I'll go away and research it, and whatever I find, I'll let you know. And then in return, what I would do, just to be nice to them, I'd take in a history of the building, so they had it be at the bar.
Yeah.
So that would get me into a lot of buildings as well. There was a lot of pubs that weren't very open about the activity, and they weren't very open about their ghost stories. So I'd go away and research them, write a history, take it in, and say to them, "I'll give you the history, but in return, I'd like to do a paranormal investigation."
That's brilliant.
And about 98% of them said, "Yeah, come in." So I'd give them the history and then we'd spend the night there. And we've had some amazing activity in some amazing venues, found some amazing history, but also as well, we've uncovered people from the past that we don't talk about anymore. There was a property in the Old Town called the Old White Hart. And there was 2 stories I uncovered there that no one had ever really talked about. There was the ghost of a girl was seen in a fireplace, and she was in her 20s. And there was a ghost of a lady with black hair seen on the staircase. And I went back in time and discovered in 1806, Charles Clarkson, who was the landlord of the pub, had a daughter called Fanny Clarkson, who was 26. She came downstairs and lit the fire, and a nightdress caught on fire and it killed her. So that's what I think people are seeing in the fireplace. And then in the 1920s, 1930s, there was a lady called Clara Seapelt. She was the landlady. She was coming down the stairs of the pub and she fell and broke her neck. And her staff found her dead at the bottom of the stairs. And I was able to get a photograph of her from the archives and show it to people that had seen this apparition. And the faces when they saw them, like, "That's her." That's, and I'd have the picture in my hand and say, "What did she look like?" and they'd say she had quite stern features and she had black hair and it was tied up, and I'd turn the picture around and show them, and the fit, they'd just drop. So that was lovely to be able to do that and just put names to these, these sightings that people have had over the years.
I find that really fascinating, where it's not just some kind of ghostly woman. You can actually try and put a name to what may have been witnessed. Absolutely. Right, I'm just going to very quickly do one more, and then this place, the Punch Hotel. Again, this is stunning building, and just to kind of make people aware who don't. Hull was widely and widely bombed during World War II, and so a lot of it was destroyed. Essentially, a lot of Hull had real issues because it was a target, it being a major port in the UK, and so the fact that we have so many of these gorgeous buildings is surprising to me. But the Punch Hotel is stunning as well, really.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building, and that is that's a relatively recent addition. The frontage there wasn't built until late 1890s, early 1900s. The original frontage was round the back, and it opened up onto the dock. And they built this new street in front of it, so they put this new frontage on to attract customers in. Yeah. People have reported hearing children running around behind the bar. And there was an event in 1941 where the landlord and landlady, Mr. and Mrs. Wallace, and their two children, they were told basically if they stay in the hotel when the bombs are dropping, they could potentially die. Yeah. And they were told if they go in the cellar, just behind there is the dock. And they were told if the bomb drops in the dock, the shockwave will blow the wall out and it will kill them. It will drown them, basically. So they ran across road to their nearest air raid shelter, which was under the Prudential Tower. Yeah. It was a big bank on the corner of King Edward Street. And the tower took a direct hit and everybody inside was killed, whereas the hotel stood. And it's such a tragic twist of fate. But I think what people are encountering are the Wallace children still running around in the pub.
That's fascinating. I mean, obviously, you've written countless books around Hull and the areas around Hull and things. Is there, it doesn't have to be a ghost story, but is there something you've uncovered, whether it be like you say, you talked about you love true crime as well as the paranormal stuff, or is there a story, whether it be monster, UFO, ghost, or murder, that you have absolutely loved more than any other in your research?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stories I research usually involved the death or murder of kids. Right. And they're particularly difficult to research. There was one in Driffield where a mum basically took her 3 boys and killed them all. So that was quite difficult to research. And there was one in Withensea where a gentleman had killed his 2 children in the bed and left them in the bed. And with both instances, when I researched them, I spent, a couple of months on each one, going to the archives, getting all the documents, typing it all up. And then at the end, I always like to visit the grave. Yeah. So I would take my daughter with me, she's at York University, about to transfer to Hull. She's really interested in true crime, criminology, and that type of stuff. So I'd take her with me, and we'd take teddy bears, and we'd go find the grave, and we'd put teddy bears on the graves of the children. And those stories I like, because it's our way of sort of paying our respects. But I do it with a lot of the murder victims. When I've researched a story, I like to visit the grave at the end. Yeah. And when I visit the grave, I'll take a single red rose and just put it down on the grave and leave it.
That's lovely, because I think obviously a lot of these people, the names, the personalities, their stories get forgotten about. I mean, and obviously you bring these people alive through your research and things in a way. You're able to tell their story. Do you, or how often do you get kind of emotionally attached to a character, a person, or an event when you're doing your research?
Every day. Without fail, every day. If you can imagine, I'm sat here researching deaths, murders, all that type of stuff. It does affect you, but I've got a great support network. I work with a lot of lovely people. I have great clients who employ me to do stuff. So we can get away from that and have a giggle and have a laugh and not take it too seriously. Just the other day, I was just researching a book on another drain in Hull that's linked to a lot of very dark history. And my lad's home from university, so I said to him, why don't we go for a hike along the drain? We'll make a day of it. We'll go out and go for a walk down the drain side, get some photographs, look at the nature and the wildlife and stuff. So I try not to be on my own too much. I'm surrounded by lovely people that are really, really good. And this last year, one of my major employers was the Silent Book Club in Hull. I do a lot of work with them, go to their events, and we've done quite a few events now in the city. All of them have sold out, but it's all around this sort of dark history. So we do a little bit of true crime, we do a few ghost stories and stuff like that. Their clientele love it. Absolutely love it.
Oh yeah.
And it's great to be able to pass these stories on, and sometimes it gets quite emotional, and sometimes the audience get quite emotional as well. We did one recently about Mary Jane Langley that was murdered out at Marfleet, and I showed the grave at the end and said that we'd been and paid our respects and put flowers down. Yeah, people get quite touched by it. But it's a great question, because you do, but at the same time as well, you try and be professional, because I think what makes the work so good is that you have that emotional attachment.
Yeah,
you do care about them, because if you didn't, you wouldn't do it. And all the people that I research, I like to think that I'm telling their stories. That they've lost their voice and it's been gone for a century, and I'm now here and I'm going to tell their story, and that's the way I look on it, and that's what drives me on to keep going, really.
Absolutely. Right, got our first question here from Truth Seeker Investigations. He's saying, Mike, is there anywhere in Hull that you can hire for a paranormal investigation that you recommend?
Not so much in Hull anymore, but Fort Paul, on the outskirts of Hull, I believe they've reopened and they're doing investigations. I've done a few events there with Yorkshire Ghost Hunts. We've had some good nights at Fort Paul. It's a big venue, a really big venue. And that's fun. I know that Anison's is closed now, so they're no longer doing it. They used to let people in Royal Station Hotel, but that's now become it's closed off, basically. You can't do anything in there anymore. Yeah. The Guildhall in Hull, they used to let people do events in there. So that was always good. But it's really weird in Hull, because we seem to see venues come, make a lot of headlines, attract a lot of guests, and then months later they close. And one of the problems we have is that a lot of these venues initially attract people that make up history, make it out to be something that it's not. So when people go, they get a bit disappointed. And it just gets a bad reputation then, so they end up getting closed.
There you go. I would say Fort Paul. I'll say, actually, funnily enough, Fort Paul is one place I've never been to. Not been to Fort Paul, and I keep meaning to, because it looks a good place. Wayne Dawson is saying, is there any story that affected you so much that you didn't want to cover it?
Yeah, there's been a few. There was the triple murder in Driffield that I talked about, where the mother killed her kids. That was not very nice. It was an horrific story, but I just felt like I had to do it. There was a book I wrote about a little boy called William Papa, who was a 14-year-old fisher lad that was murdered at sea. He was dumped at sea. And because he was dumped at sea, there's no grave, there's no memorial, there's no plaque or anything for him. And I remember when I finished that book, I saved it, switched off, and just went out and sat on a bench and just got away from humans altogether, because I just needed some space. So that one was really, really difficult. Mary Jane Langley, the Marfleet murder mystery, that was a difficult one to work on. Emma Starkey, the Coy Street murder, that was a difficult one. There's so many. And you just want to walk away, but at the same time, you've got to finish it. You've got to tell their story. So I do a lot of hiking, go out in the country a lot, get a lot of fresh air. I love trees.
I'd imagine you'd need to, when because obviously you spend countless hours researching these stories. It must affect you, so that's why it's good that you kind of get out and get some fresh air and have a bit of, normality for a bit. Otherwise, you'll always be bogged down with everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Right. One here from Simon saying, what are your views on the Flixton werewolf and the UFO sightings around Flamborough and the East Coast?
Yeah, fascinating. I've known Paul Sinclair for a good few years now. We're good friends. We appeared at the first Outer Limits UFO conference in Hull way back. He's a nice guy, he's Paul. We've done a lot of stuff together over the years. We've had lots of conversations and stuff. What the weird thing about the Flixton werewolf was that was old Stinker. So when the Barmston train story came out, the media was calling it Old Stinker, where it was two very clear defined areas where these sightings were taking place. So the name got sort of pushed onto Hull, whereas it was more up north at Flixton. But again, Flixton has the cemetery just off the main road and the site where the old Spittal Hospital was. So there's a lot of history up there. And I found it absolutely fascinating. And all the stuff that's going on at Flamborough is just that part of what we know locally is the Wolves Triangle, which is just an area of high strangeness. It's crisscrossed with ley lines, with ancient cases, which is like a funeral path. You've got the I forget the gypsy race, which is called the Waters of Woe locally, which is it's like a water source that basically foretells bad stuff that's going to happen in Great Britain.
Right.
There's also Burton Agnes with its screaming skull, loads of different haunted drummers' wells, haunted rivers, all this kind of stuff. So it's a really big area of high strangeness. And then on top of that, you've got all the UFO sightings right along the coastline. I mean, the East Yorkshire coastline is just rife with sightings.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really interesting place to research.
I bet actually, because it sounds like there is lots of strange things going on, right? Corinne is saying Mike's an inspiration. How did you start and why, or how did you start all this?
So when I was 8, I saw a weird light in the sky over Hull, and it looked like an egg, looked like a big floating egg. And I asked my dad what it could be, and instead of my dad saying to me it's an hot air balloon or it's a blimp or it's a UFO or it's a helicopter, it gave me the part works called Unexplained, which was published in the late 70s, early 80s, and it gave me the first volume. And I remember as a little boy, it was too heavy for me to carry. And I've got the full collection now. But back then it was, and I remember reading it from cover to cover and just thinking, wow. And in there was stuff about Jack the Ripper, there was stuff about unexplained crimes, unsolved mysteries, ghosts, UFOs, all the stuff that I'm doing now. So that was it. And every year for Christmas, my dad would say to me, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I'd say, "Well, there's a new UFO box set with all these videos of documentaries in, or there's a new book, Timothy Good or Eric von Daniken," and I'd just give him a list of weird and wonderful things. And when my dad was alive, he would sit and read it with me, or I'd sit and watch it with me, and then we'd sit and discuss it, and we'd talk about it, and it was great because he was a big believer, So that kind of rubbed off on me. But then I worked in retail management. I was a boss of a shop. I had staff, responsibilities, and then 19 years ago, I was diagnosed with a critical heart condition, so I had to give up work. So this was a hobby, basically, that I turned into a business. And since then, I've published 32 books. I've written 150, worked on countless TV shows, and it's like a full-time job now.
That's and like I say, just to kind of push this front, because when I first met Mike, he'd already written loads of books, and now say he's published 32, and he said, "Oh yeah, well since lockdown and things like that, I've written 150 more." And it's like, do you want to just show everybody what you showed me before we started, the thickness of your books?
If you can find it, just give me a second. So if we can just lift you up a little bit and turn the camera around, so you're just getting a view of my eyebrows now. That's not working.
Well, if EB, like I say, you've got file after file after file on your computer, but do you want to show? Oh, there you go. Oh,
right, so zoom out a little bit. So these are all completed books.
That's insane.
So there's a list there. And as you can see on the other side as well, I'll scroll across. There's a list there, and it continues. And that's all the stuff that's been finished. There's entire series on there. So there's lots of true crime stuff, lots of stuff. There's a series that's just all about, I don't know if you can see it, just about World War II.
Yeah. That's incredible.
And stuff like that. And so that's what I've been working on.
Do you want to show everybody one of your books to give an idea of how much work you put into every single book?
I'll just put you back there, and then so this is the East Yorkshire UFO files. There we go, and you can see there how big It is.
That's mad.
And, it's just tons and tons of research and sightings. So that's just one. And they're all sort of that sort of size. So they're all quite big. And they're all fully referenced, and they have a big reading list at the back and all that kind of stuff.
I said before you came online that you put all of us to shame with the how prolific you are, and I honestly don't know how you do it, because I'm one that would love to write a book, and I'm thinking I'd love to better write a book, and it's like, geez, and I see you and you go, oh yeah, I've finished 30, I've got 150 more written during lockdown. Like, what the bloody hell, right? Anyway, Wayne Dawson saying, which crime story intrigues you the most and why? I mean, the Jack the Ripper whole link is great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I found Jack the Ripper absolutely fascinating. We've just started what is known as the Autumn of Terror. So we're at that sort of back end of the year. This is roughly around the time when he started. So it's nearly the anniversary. So it's a big case, and it's a case that's fascinated me for years. I've researched all the suspects with links to. There was 14 suspects with links to Hull. There was Ripper letters sent to Hull. And just this week, we announced we were doing a Jack the Ripper event with the Silent Book Club, which involves like an hour of silent reading for anyone that's never been to one, which is great because it's really relaxing. And then we do a walking tour looking at all the connections between Hull and the Jack the Ripper case. And it's sold out, and we're really surprised and quite pleased with that. So we've had to put a second date in, which we've got coming up. And it's great people come along and find out aspects of history that they wouldn't realise. And what is really fascinating, the place where one of the Jack the Ripper letters was sent to in 1888 is now a barber shop run by a couple of Turkish gentlemen. And I popped in recently and was like, do you know about Jack the Ripper? And they were like, no, is he from round here? And they were chatting to them. They thought it was a customer. They thought it was a client. And I had to explain to them it was a Victorian serial killer. So that case has fascinated me since I was a kid. And I know East London, the East End of London. I know it better than I know West Hull. I know if I get off the tube, I know exactly where all the murder sites are and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just absolutely fascinating.
And just to kind of, I mean, I'm going to go into one of the questions in a second, because I've seen it a couple of times from Maria. I'm going to come on to that in a second, but I think, am I right in thinking that one of the suspects is James Maybrick? There was a very famous book way back about the Diary of Jack the Ripper and things, and people have kind of rubbished it and all kinds of things. And there's so many suspects, but is that the main suspect that's got that link to Hull, or are there others?
He's one of them. So Maybrick's link's a bit weird, really, because Maybrick was allegedly the writer of the Jack the Ripper diary. People have also accused his brother, Michael Maybrick, of being the writer. Michael Maybrick was a Freemason and things like that. James Maybrick was allegedly poisoned by his wife, Florence, and Florence was imprisoned for his murder. And eventually the doctor that testified that got her set free was a local doctor who worked in Hull, lived in Patrington, which is just down the road. And his name basically came up a lot in the case because he was a doctor that spoke out. There was also a petition launched in Hull to get her freed, which was launched just around the corner from the Royal Station Hotel. And this doctor was fascinating. His name was Dr. Henry Coates, and he was basically the first person in East Yorkshire to have a motor car. But he was also the first person in East Yorkshire to crash a motor car. So he was a character. He used to go around on horseback carrying a sword and this kind of stuff. And it just so happens, in a weird, cruel twist of fate, in 1888, when he was training to be a medical man, he got his training at the Royal London Hospital across the road from the first Jack the Ripper killing. So there's all these weird little connections. But yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, there's so many kind of people who think, there's DNA evidence and all kinds of things. So just to kind of put this to bed, who do you think is Jack the Ripper?
I think it's no one that's been mentioned yet.
So it's not Aaron Kosminski then?
The problem with Kosminski, when you look at Kosminski, the thing that they said was a shawl wasn't a shawl. It was a table runner that belongs on a table, so it wouldn't have been worn by a person.
Yeah.
Also, the guy that had it, the police officer, PC Amos Simpson or Ambrose Simpson, depending on which source you read, he wasn't on duty in the East End of London that night, so he couldn't have got hold of that. The other issue is when the shawl / table runner was brought to the Wolverhampton Jack the Ripper conference, guess whose family handled it? Catherine Eddowes. So when they looked for DNA and they found evidence of DNA from Eddowes' family, that to me is like, it raises reasonable doubt. But as well, when you peer review the actual findings, the DNA evidence shows that it was just a Polish Jewish gentleman's DNA that was on someone's table runner, and it wasn't Kosminski. Like, when you look at the population of Polish Jewish people that was in London at the time, it was in the thousands. There was lots and lots. So for me, it's not a open and shut case.
So it's still unsolved. I like the fact it's unsolved still.
Yeah, still unsolved.
Absolutely right. I'm going to go back to this question, and we'll do this as the last one because we've gone over the hour. Maria came in and basically said, I've lost her question now. She has asked it twice, but she was basically saying, she said, oh, there we are. There it is. Do you believe in werewolves? Sorry if you've answered this already. I just got here. So obviously you was involved in an investigation of a werewolf case, and you're very historically minded. So therefore, I'm pretty much I know the answer to this one. But do you believe in werewolves, Mike?
I don't believe in werewolves, but I do believe in the people that have seen stuff, because when I've sat and spoke to them, they seem very genuine. I don't know what they've seen. Like I say, it could be a dog, or it could be a fox, or it could be just a hairy man. Like I say, it's all. So I'm not ruling it out.
Well, considering you've seen a porn shoot in a cemetery, and a bloke drop out of a tree in a shortened t-shirt, then nothing surprises me. It really doesn't. Mike, this has been. I mean, I could talk to you for another couple of hours, easy, because there are so many cases we could have gone down. I did say to Mike, I need to get you on again to kind of do a deep dive into either one particular case or one particular location, because I think the amount of research and time and effort you put into each of your books, I think it deserves that, and I think you're the best person to, like I say, talk about either, like I said, it may be a place in Hull, but it may be somewhere else that's very famously known as a haunted location, which I'd love to get you back in, and we can pick apart some of these stories that these places seemingly like to thrive on. But it's so good to speak to you, for it's been a while, Mike. So yeah, thank you so much. Before we go though, Mike, and I know that my mods have been putting links in all the way through the chat tonight, but if people want to follow you, buy your books, like I said, there have been links during the chat, but where can they find your books? And you do a walking tours and things like that as well. So how can they follow you and listen to you as well?
So my company is Amazing Hull Tours. We are active on Facebook. They can find me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, at Mike Covell. My books at the moment are not on sale. I'm currently in the process of hopefully changing over to a new publisher. There's been a lot of discussion and stuff, and hopefully we can get it sorted and get all the legalities ironed out and get the books back out on sale again. But yeah, I mean, if you come into Hull, give me a shout. If you're a paranormal team coming to Hull and you're wanting to look for a werewolf or whatever, look for us at Amazing Hull Tours, drop us an email and we'll show you the sites. We take a lot of paranormal groups out, looking at stuff and visiting.
I'm so tempted to come over to Hull, because I'm not that far away, because I'm living in Lincolnshire. I'm so tempted to come over to Hull, come with you, and sit around Barmston Drain and wait for a werewolf to appear. Seriously, I would just.
I think, come and do it. Yeah, come and do it sometime. Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
It's amazing down there. We were filming one night. It was real creepy. It was real dark, and we had like music thudding in the distance. And we had a drone, and we sent the drone to see what it was. And further along the drain, there was a lot of Russian fellas having a rave, just all outside dancing. And it was, and we walked down to them and introduced ourselves, and they were all listening to music, and it was lovely. Such a surreal place.
Just a bit. I mean, where anything can happen. Let's put it that way. That's about, yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, genuinely, I think that'd be really, really good fun. But yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, please do kind of get in touch with Mike. Obviously, you're doing paranormal conventions as well, haven't you? Have you got one coming up, or have you?
No, I've had to cancel. Unfortunately, it's a long story involving an employer that didn't pay me and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of crap going on.
Because that'd have been great.
So yeah, I am at the the horror festival this year, which is in Hull, which is a local one to me, which is easy for me to do. And at the horror festival, we have loads of paranormal stuff, but there's horror stuff as well. We've got some of the guys from 28 Years Later coming down, and I'll be interviewing them and talking to them, and people can come and meet them and get the photographs and autographs and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Right. So if anybody's watching and you're fancying a paranormal investigation, or you want to know the true history of a place, Mike, I tell you now, Mike's the man. So, absolutely follow him, go on with his ghost tours. You will not be disappointed. Mike knows his stuff. Let's put it that way. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a fascinating one. I know we've gone over slightly. I apologize for going over, but I think you deserve actually a lot longer than this because of how much work you put into this. So it's been brilliant. So thank you so much, Mike, and an absolute pleasure. Cheers. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. So we're going to finish there. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you for all your comments. I hope you've enjoyed this evening. Mike is just full of facts, full of information, and is a minefield of great knowledge about his area, not just Hull, but all of the northeast of England. Brilliant. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to Kazza again for your support. It really is massively appreciated. Just let you know, there'll be no tea party this Thursday, but I am going to be obviously back next Monday, and I hope to be speaking to a witch. I shall say no more on that one. But anyway, that is next week. Okay. All done. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for all your comments, all the chat. Thank you for all your support. If this is your first time seeing the podcast, please do think about liking, sharing this out to everybody if you fancy, and subscribing. It really does help the channel grow. So yeah. So thank you, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed that. And I shall see you again next week. All right, guys.